Welcome back to the channel, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you have had a wonderful few days since I last saw you. Today, I have for you one of the most interesting everything you need to knows we will have had this season, including my new and updated chip strategy, and you may be able to tell by the title, but my perspective has significantly shifted on what I deem to be optimal, and I will be taking you through all of that. We will be looking at Liverpool double GameWeek assets, Everton double GameWeek assets, Bournemouth, Brentford, Bruno, Gordon, and we'll be looking at a piece of decision making, which I think is very, very important, and just essentially interpreting decisions in a slightly different way. Now, the response to my request for increasing the like count has been superb, and so for that, I'm very grateful. If we could potentially hit 6,450 subscribers, resultant of this video, I would be very grateful as well. And let's go for 450 likes on this video because I put a lot of effort into planning it, as you will see again in the team selection video tomorrow. But without anything else needing to be said, let's hop into it. Firstly, when I compared my free hit 29 squad alongside my non-free hit 34 squad, and then I compared it to the same thing but the other way around, the difference was actually quite big in terms of the upside that I could have, especially in free hit 29. For game week 34, I can arrive at a team that largely looks the same, and therefore you probably can as well, to what will be close to the free hit template. Whereas in 29, you get to nothing close with the players and teams you currently have. So that's the first thing. The second thing is Crystal Palace, Liverpool, and Newcastle. Crystal Palace double in 33 and play in 34 as the Newcastle. So having their assets after 29 is very useful. Not only do they have a brilliant fixture in 30, though, so you'd want them instantly, they also have a brilliant fixture in 28. So you would really want them for either side and then just not having them for 29 where they blank, right? And similar with Newcastle. Free hit 29 allows you to do that. And even Liverpool, it's very much the same case, albeit they don't play in 34. So then you can just start to offload their assets after the double, right? You can just store some free transfers and then move them out. And that's what I'm looking to do. And I will show you the plan step by step in my team selection video tomorrow, right? And then, like I said, for me, I think it optimizes my bench boost. I personally am not a fan of bench boost 33. I don't see huge upside to it, primarily because all the teams are pretty much playing each other, right? There's not as many doublers, so all the doubling teams are pretty much playing against each other. So I will have, for example, 6 players in one game at a time, and I will have that a couple of times. And that is not really my preference, right? Especially when it comes to the bench boost. I want to be picking cheaper assets from playing against teams that I don't own to maximize my upside. And Wildcard 35, bench boost 36 allows me to do that. It also allows me a much easier route into Erling Haaland for 36, who I would like. And given the restructuring that I'll need, having the bench boost followed immediately after the wildcard is very helpful. And all of that is facilitated by free hit 29 as opposed to free hit 34. So now, given that's the case, and I've explained to you why I'm so comfortable with this strategy, at least for now, let's move on to the assistant manager and triple captain discussion, and we can take things from there. Resultant of myself going free hit 29, or at least likely committing to that, and largely committing to that, I'm talking 90% plus, if not more, and also committing to wildcard 35, bench boost 36 now, which again, I feel very comfortable with. It means that one of the triple captain will have to be used in either 24 or 33, and then the assistant manager either 24 to 26 or 31 to 33. So I thought I would show you what the two sets of combinations look like, and then you can kind of see why I am at where I'm at. Right. The first thing is on the left-hand side, these are my preferred combinations with assistant manager 24 to 26, and then triple captain 33. It's looking like we'll get Salah versus Leicester away and Aston Villa away or Tottenham away. Now, I think both of those games are better than both Bournemouth away and Everton away, albeit I'm not so sure anymore after my analysis last night, which we'll come on to, that Bournemouth away, Everton away is actually that bad. So we'll come on to that, right? And then on the left-hand side are the assistant manager chip games that I will have. Everton versus Leicester, Everton versus Liverpool, Fulham versus Nottingham Forest, and Manchester City versus Liverpool. Now, the ones in green are obviously my team. And why is the Everton versus Leicester fixture bracketed? Well, that will probably be the only one which isn't able to capture the bonus of the 5-team rule. Okay, so that's why it's there, because therefore there's automatically a little bit less upside associated with that. And Manchester City versus Liverpool is contingent on City being 6 by the time we get to game 26. Now, for that to happen, realistically, well, Newcastle are on 41 points, and so are Manchester City. But City have 3 better goal difference than them. So they would just need to drop more points in that 2-game span. However, City do have Arsenal away and Newcastle at home. So if Newcastle could win this week and then get a point at the Etihad, they would be guaranteed to be above them. And then Chelsea, who are 1 point below them, are on 40 points. City are on 41. We have West Ham at home, Brighton away. let's just say City draw both games. And again, like I said, it is contingent on results. So I'll have to get a little bit lucky to access this fixture for the 5-team bonus rule. And I am going to be using the 5-team bonus rule regardless, even if it's on Leicester at home to Brentford on Friday night for Game Week 26. Then that's what I'll be doing. If not, Wolves away to Bournemouth, which some of you may not like, but I'll explain down the line when we get there. Chelsea, we need to finish, obviously, above Manchester City in the table in the next 2 weeks. I'm expecting, let's say, we get 4 points away, 4 points in total against West Ham and Brighton, or the Manchester City will need to get 2, right? So again, a draw against Arsenal or a draw against Newcastle, or both, really. The key thing is that they don't win either game. As long as they don't win either game, I think I should be fine. I think Newcastle should be able to, well, from my opinion, beat Fulham this week, albeit I think it'll be a very close game. And then Chelsea hopefully get the job done and get 4 points or more. And then that would place Manchester City 6th and allow me to access this table bonus. Going on to the right-hand side, and we are going to come on to the analysis shortly. I was just setting up for you to show you what it looks like. We've obviously got Salah at Bournemouth away and Everton away. And the whole reason this kind of even become a discussion in the first place is because many people, including myself, haven't looked at it too favourably and recognised that it could be potentially quite difficult. And then on the right-hand side, those are the fixtures that I would have as of now with the assistant manager. West Ham at home to Bournemouth, Forest versus Everton, and obviously the sides in green are the ones that I would have chosen. Newcastle versus Palace and Crystal Palace versus Bournemouth. Now, all of those 4 capture the 5-team rule, resultant of how the table stands at the moment and how I think it's going to stand at that point. I did take that into account, even though it's quite a bit away. I don't, however, have so much confidence in getting even one win there. Whereas when I look at my assistant manager fixtures as of now, I quite like the Fulham Nottingham Forest one. And we're going to come on to the analysis for all of these in a moment. I just thought I would set it up and show you what it looks like. Now let's go on to the Salah triple captain analysis for this week. Then we can go back to the assistant manager. Given I had to film this video for a Wednesday upload, I was aware that I had to make some form of a decision and be well informed, at least to a degree that I'm happy with, when it comes to the triple captain prospects for this particular week. So I went and did some analysis on Bournemouth and Everton, and I tried to take the most neutral perspective I could. Initially, before having watched anything, or thought about anything, I wasn't particularly bullish on the triple captaincy, but I must say, after having watched it, I'm not as down on it as I previously was. I have a complete appreciation for Bournemouth's form, for Everton's form, the fact that both fixtures are away. I'm going to come on to all of that, but I don't think it's as bad as maybe I thought initially, right? If there was one team I could pick right now with the current state of affairs, with all the injuries going around, who would I pick to beat Bournemouth at Bournemouth? It would be Liverpool. Why? Well, firstly, one of their best weapons is, if not their best weapon, is their high press, Bournemouth, right? However, you have one of the most press-resistant centre-backs in the world, and arguably the best centre-back in the world, in Virgil van Dijk. One of the best ways to bypass a high press is by just going over it, right? By going long. Well, you've got Trent's long balls and passing range. You've got Van Dijk's diagonals into Salah. And yes, Kirkes is very tenacious. He's very physical, very strong. But if there's anyone who could deal with that, especially receiving those diagonals, it will be Mohamed Salah, right? Then, to play through the press, like quite literally through it, you've got Gravenberch and McAllister in the middle. Gravenberch, so good on the half turn. And then once he gets you, once he has a yard of space, once he receives what, he can go and he can carry in the middle, just like Szoboszlai can. Also, one thing I've noticed with Liverpool is, whilst I think it is optimal to certainly jump the pivot, they're still very, very good and calm in those situations, right? They know what to do. They're very well rehearsed. And whether it be carrying, right, and taking things on the half turn, or just playing like a bounce pass back into the centre-backs, they often make the right decision, right? And then again, McAllister, someone who you can really rely on to receive. I don't think he's as good as Gravenberch in receiving in those areas. I think he's more susceptible to being dispossessed. I've seen it a few times this season, but nonetheless, still, especially when they form that double pivot as opposed to a single pivot, very, very useful and proficient in those areas. I spoke about Gravenberch and Szoboszlai's carrying in the middle. There was always a little bit of space there, especially on transition, given the way they build and the space they leave in the middle. They do tend to overload wide areas, whether that be through going long or even the fullback jumping on either side, especially on that left-hand side. And for those reasons, with the space in the middle, I think when you have two powerful carriers, they can hurt you on transition. And it's not just their transitional threat and their carrying threat, but it's also the threat at the front three, specifically Mohamed Salah. So I think Liverpool have more than enough to beat them, even though going to Bournemouth has been a very, very, very tough challenge this season. However, like I say, you're still going to the informed side in the league, probably. You're still going to the side who have been formidable at home. They've only lost 2 games there this season. One against Brighton, where they lost 2-1. And honestly, I think maybe a draw was a fair result that day. And the other against us, when they lost to us 1-0. but honestly, they were probably the better side, let alone deserving of a draw, right? So going there has been very, very tough. And like I said, they're on a high. And betting against momentum, as I've expressed previously, is not something that I love to do. However, how do Trent and Robertson deal with these long balls that will get put on them consistently? I'm not so sure they do unbelievably well, specifically down Robinson's flank. And the other thing is, if they are to face waves of pressure dissimilar to what they usually do, and they're going to have these they'll turn it into a scrappy affair. Apologies, Bournemouth. How does this indirectly affect Salah? Well, probably not as well, because he probably won't have as many chances to hurt Bournemouth from settled possession. I do expect Bournemouth to get pinned at times, but probably not as many times as oppositions usually do against Liverpool. And I also expect them to cause more threat against Liverpool than most oppositions do. And as I say, the best form of defense is attack. So this could be a very, very, very difficult game to call for all of those reasons, because there's so many contrasting factors. But I do genuinely think that with the space on offer and with the transitional threat, it's not actually that bad for Salah. And it's not as bad as maybe I thought initially, nor has it being made out to be. And I have the same view when it comes to Everton. Now, I completely appreciate the fact that it's going to be under the lights. It's at Goodison Park. They don't have a great record there. Everton will make themselves very tough to beat. I imagine they do something similar to United's 5-4-1. You look at their approach to the game against Everton. Yeah, sure, it's more of a quarterback on the ball, but it's very much a 5 at the back off the ball and a flat, deep one at that. And I think they'll come into a 5-4-1, copy basically what United did to an extent, and make it very difficult for Liverpool. I think that's Liverpool's probably biggest weakness, I would say, having to break down really compact, well-structured, well-coached, disciplined, deeper blocks, primarily due to the profiles of players they have, as opposed to the quality of players they have. However, when I was watching it against Brighton, I did think that if Brighton were a bit sharper or on another day, given some of the base on offer, probably a little bit more than I would have liked, and just a few other things, and just the quality of Liverpool, they could hurt them. And as such, again, I'm not super confident in Everton doing something or grinding out a result, even though I appreciate all of the factors that come with it. For example, that they are still a very good defense. They've got good defenders. It's at home. It's under the lights. So I think it's actually a super, super difficult one to call. And I'm not going to say, oh, I think he's going to blank and then blank again, or he's going to haul again. I think you just have to have some appreciation for the fact that given the variables on display, in my opinion at least, it could really go either way. But it's difficult to argue that these fixtures are better than the ones that he could have down the line in the form of Leicester away and then either Villa away or Spurs at home. And again, like I said, I don't like to bet against momentum. And you really would be betting against momentum and form, given how Everton have been doing in recent weeks since Moyes' appointment, and the prospects, not just the prospects, but the form of Bournemouth and the prolonged period of form of Bournemouth as well. Before we move on, one thing that didn't get a mention, that certainly should have, is the individual battles that Salah will have. Now, I've spoken about it a few times, but for me, the best performance by a mile this season against Mohamed Salah was Alex Moreno's away at Nottingham Forest. He was helped by Nuno's approach, right, and the fact that he has such a physical team in general, so he could rely on them and the structure. And he knew that if he jumped and he was so aggressive, he would at least have cover, and it wouldn't be resultant in a huge chance for Salah straight away, right? Given as well where the duels were taking place. But he took the most aggressive approach, I would say, anyone has to Mohamed Salah. And the thing is, this week Salah's got Kirkez, who will come at him again and again and again and again, right? And not only will he come at him again and again and again, and has he got the right mindset, in my opinion, to defend against someone like Mohamed Salah, but he's also just very, very competent, right? And that really helps. He's got a fantastic dueling capacity and a brilliant tackler. So for those reasons, I don't think that 1v1 match will be too easy. And then again, especially if Everton go back 5 and you have so many duels in those wide areas between Mykolenko and Salah, I back Mykolenko to do a decent job, right? I've watched him enough to know that in these 1v1 battles, he's not the easiest to get past, not the easiest to get the better of. So I would say that 1v1 battle in both games, you could certainly have better ones for Salah. You really could. Not just because of the players, but also the conditions, more so with Everton. But Kirkez is not an easy one to come up against. And there's a good chance that they come up against each other a lot in training next season, given all the rumours. And that wouldn't be happening if Kirkez wasn't rated very highly, and fairly so. I just completed this entire section and didn't press start record. So I'm going to have to do it again. Previously, we assessed Salah's triple captain prospects for Game Week 24. But what about using the assistant manager chip in Game Week 24 all the way up to Game Week 26? What are the potential prospects for that chip, and what can we expect? Well, firstly, let's look at Everton versus Leicester. Now, this is by no means a slam dunk, and whilst Everton will go into this game as favourites, even if it was the reverse result and Leicester win, I don't think you can be too surprised. I think you have to have a respect for the Leicester attack and for the players that they hold. However, like I said, Everton probably go into this game as favourites. They're at home. They were in good form. Obviously, Leicester have just beaten Spurs away as well. Slight asterisk, because you never really know what you're going to get with Spurs. They could lose to Leicester and then go and beat Real Madrid 10-0, and you wouldn't be all that surprised. Maybe 10's a bit of a stretch, but you get the point. So anything can really happen in this game. But like I said, I think Everton are the favourites, and I expect them to get it done with their form and with the quality of players that they have. So I'm going to give myself 8 to 10 points, resultant of them winning by at least 1-0 or 2-1, 8 to 10 points roughly. Okay. And then for me, the banker is Fulham versus Nottingham Forest. And I say banker, but what I really think is that this is the one that I have the highest expectation for. I don't see Fulham losing this game. Obviously they could, right? Obviously they could. But you're going to have to take a bet somewhere if you're going to constantly look to attack the 5-team rule. And I think this is probably the best bet I'm going to get all season. When you look at it from a slightly realistic perspective, like, yeah, sure, game 27, there might be a wonderful fixture to target the 5-team rule. But then it would also mean you're using this chip in 29 so that you can't use a free hit in 29. So it's just not very realistic. So where it's realistic, I think this is honestly one of the best ones. I think going to Fulham is such a tough game. One of the things that Forest thrive off of is their physicality. Well, Fulham can pretty much match them for that. I expect Forest to go on somewhat of a decline. I spoke about that before Bournemouth. I don't see Fulham losing, so you can set the floor at 10. And that's a very healthy amount of points to get from one game. Even if you picked Arsenal against Southampton and they beat them, 3-0, you're only getting 11 points. So for a draw, I'm getting pretty much the same. And of course, the ceiling extends to about 18 to 20 points with a guaranteed table bonus available, because I've done the maths and it's impossible for a table bonus not to be available in these fixtures. Then, going on to Everton versus Liverpool and Manchester City versus Liverpool, and I will only choose City versus Liverpool if they are sixth and the table bonus is readily available to myself. If not, I think I'm probably going to go Leicester at home to Brentford on Friday Night Football. I feel somewhat confident about that, albeit it's not a preference, right? I'm not as confident about it as I would be Fulham versus Nottingham Forest. What am I expecting from these games? Well, the one good thing is, if Liverpool do slip up, and obviously I'm being rewarded for betting against Liverpool, right? Because I am betting against the most informed team in the country and probably the best team in the country at the moment. If they do slip up and go through a little bit of bad form, at least I can get my jabs in quickly. I can get them early. I can get in and out, take my reward, and go. Let's say they go to Bournemouth and they lose. Maybe because it's just a little bit, just like a mini spiral in their season. Going away to Everton can be tough. They don't have a particularly good record there. Now, I'm not trying to employ a fallacy and use an appeal to history, but the reasons that going to Goodison's tough, well, it still largely remains all of those variables. So if we just assume that I get one draw, right, out of Everton versus Liverpool and City versus Liverpool, which I think is fair for me to assume, I get about 10 points from the games combined. Even if Everton draw against Leicester, let's say a 2-2 draw, that's 5 points, so I'm on 15. And then I will be, at some point I have to be bullish. Let's say Fulham win, I get 20 and I finish on 35. 35 points, when you compare that to my outlook on what you would get using it in 31 to 33, albeit not too dissimilar, I do think that the difference in Salah triple captain could potentially be quite large, and we'll come on to that in a little bit, could potentially be quite large, and as such, it would offset even some downside that I accumulate from using the chip now, and in the end, I would end up winning over the span of however many, 10 game weeks that we've got until both these chips are used within my strategy at least. That's being pessimistic. I can see Everton beating Leicester and putting up 10 points. I can see Fulham beating Forest and then putting up 20. So automatically I'm on 30. And then I really wouldn't be surprised if City, with all their new recruits, beat Liverpool at home. And then automatically I go to 50. And like I said, maybe Liverpool slip up and they just have a bad bit of form just for a 3-week period. Everton draw and I get to 60. And then when you combine that with the upside that I'll have from using Salah's triple captain in what I deem to be better fixtures, well, then all of a sudden the upside is huge. Whereas I don't think I get that with the other strategy. I don't think that assistant manager 31 to 33 is likely to blow me out of the water when it comes to the fixtures I have now. And nor do I think the triple captainship for 24 will likely blow me out of the water, albeit I could see it happening. Like I said, I'm not so down on the fixtures anymore. The counter argument to all of this will be, okay, well, what if you just use Am in 36 to 38? There's a few issues with that. One, I think bench boost 36 is optimal. So I really don't like using it then. I think it takes away money and potentially transfers, especially in the way that I'm looking to use it. Game Week 38's fixtures, by the way, aren't so good for the Wildcard 35 squad. Hence why I'll be rolling into that and then making adjustments as well. And you won't really be able to do that if you're using the assistant manager chip. It's going to take away one of the spots I want anyway from the triple up of the players as well. And by that point, the table will be at its most settled state, most likely. And as such, getting side to allow you to access the 5-team rule, but have a somewhat realistic chance of returning for you, I think is significantly harder. And for all of those reasons, I'm quite comfortable using it now and betting on the period of game 24 to 26. So that's about it. That's how I feel about chip strategy currently. That's my analysis of the assistant manager and triple captain in the short term. And I've obviously provided some insights to the assistant manager and triple captainship down the line, and hence why I prefer the strategy on screen now of assistant manager, double game week 24, free hit, blank game week 29, triple captain, double game week 33, wildcard 35, and bench boost, double game week 36. That will very likely be my strategy this season. One thing that I did not explain is that using it even 31 to 33 is generally just, it will be a more hectic period given, as you can see, the blank and double game weeks that surround it, and just not accounting for the direct points that you're going to get from the chip, the sacrifices that I think you'll make elsewhere, and those hidden sacrifices, I do think could hurt you as well. And who knows what crops up. Maybe it becomes even more difficult to use transfers on it if you're looking to use it in the same way as myself. Like I said, I'm always looking to do the best I possibly can, maximize my upside while still being sensible and not over leveraging myself in terms of risk. Yeah, as such, I do genuinely think this is the best strategy. I'm, of course, aware of the fact that Salah could do brilliantly this week, as I spoke about many a times in my analysis. But with everything taken into account, I feel fairly confident going here, and whatever will be, will be. So that's chip strategy done. But before we go into the players, I wanted to talk about decision-making and 50-50 decisions in particular, and the huge impact of your decisions now, because it's a thought I had last week just after I filmed Solving Your Problems, and I definitely wanted to talk about it in this video. If I asked you to go out into the world and find me 2 identical leaves, you would never end your quest. Because, well, at least according to Google, there are no 2 identical leaves on the planet. You can find 2 leaves that are so similar, and you could probably do that billions of times for me, or at least millions. But to find me 2 ones that are exactly identical, just like finding me 2 people that are exactly identical, well, that would be very challenging, if not impossible. And I think FPL decisions are very much like that, and we frame them in the wrong way. Often we'll say, oh, this captaincy choice is 50-50. Oh, choosing between the player from the same team is 50-50, and there's not that much in it. We might be right. There may not be much in it, but there will be something in it. There will always be something in it, because how likely is it that 2 things are the exact same in terms of their true expected points? I'm talking about to the maybe 15th decimal point. Well, probably not. Just like in your life, choosing between A and B is probably never really 50-50. Obviously, if you're choosing between a coin, fair enough, but maybe your intuition kicks in, and now it makes it a 51-49. And maybe in FPL, we have a lot of 50.1 to 49.9 decisions. However, over even a medium length span, you're going to see the benefits, I think, of always choosing the one with a slightly higher probability. And as such, I think when you see a 50-50 decision, you should really look at it in a slightly different way and realize you're probably missing something, I'm probably missing something, we're all probably missing something. And there's a little bit of knowledge, you can go a little bit deeper, and that will allow you to access the decision which is of a slightly higher probability with certainty, as opposed to just guessing. So when you come across these decisions, I personally think looking at it in a slightly different way, always looking at it a bit deeper, if you do genuinely think it's a 50-50, makes a lot of sense, because in reality, it probably never is, and we're probably all just missing something. Right, it's easier to say that because it oversimplifies it, and then we don't feel as bad for going for the wrong decision, quote unquote, if we do. But I think there's always a right decision to be made, and we should always strive to make that, especially if we look to get better and better and better at this game. And the second thing, when it comes to decisions and decision making, is a huge impact to them. You could make one, quote unquote, wrong decision, and it could have genuinely a huge effect on your season. Let's just suppose, right, game week 6 rolls around, and you're a little bit lazy with price changes. So you lose 0.2 million, right? Which means that you can't afford Chris Wood at 6-1, and you have to go DCL at 5-9. And as a result, you hold DCL for a while, just given other problems in your squad structure, and Wood keeps going on and on and on and scoring points. Well, not only are you down huge amounts of points there, but maybe you lose squad value, which you would have done as a result. Well, from that point, you can't access the next best player, and instead you get the second one, and there's a huge point swing there, and it just keeps going and going and going. And that is not the most unrealistic thing to happen. So I would say with every single decision you make, you should try and plan and see what repercussions it could have down the line, and just treat them very preciously, transfers and decisions in general, because like I said, it could have a huge detrimental effect, but on the opposite side, it could have a huge positive effect. So I really would take care over each and every decision if, again, you are looking to improve and keep going up and up and up in terms of rank. Previously, I came to you and said that 2 of the top 50 in the world reside in our community. Well, now 2 of the top 20 in the world reside in our community. Now, they, of course, have done an absolutely excellent job themselves to get that. And most of the credit, of course, lies with them. But as they have said, not myself, they've been helped by being in our community, and quite significantly so. So if you would like to join the community and not only get the FPL analysis, but the exclusive football analysis that is in there as well, if you would like to be surrounded by a bunch of managers who, on the whole, are doing very well, I would say, and some people who've had massive improvements since joining, and just there's a very good feel factor in the group, then by all means do join. Or maybe you would even like to join our Diamond 1-hour Q&A Zoom calls, which largely extend past that, where we go into deeper tactical talk. Everyone's team gets an individual review. You have multiple people trying to help you out. We look at the planning for your team as well. If you would like that, then we have that tomorrow, because I imagine most of you are watching this on a Wednesday. So who knows? Maybe I'll see some of you there. As mentioned before, I would say there's minimum downside and maximum upside to this opportunity. If you don't like it after a month, by all means, cancel. I hope to see some of you there, and I would absolutely love to have you. Now, let's move on to the players for the first time, really, aside from Salah's triple captain prospects, and look at Everton's double game week assets. I'm actually quite bullish on bringing them in. I quite like it in general. I think Pickford just looks like a very solid buy. Not only has he got the double coming up and a good fixture in Leicester at home, and both fixtures being at home, but what he's also got is fixtures down the line, which are all like fixtures. Like going away to Palace, if he's going to keep a clean sheet, he probably makes like 6 saves, 5 saves. Let's just say he makes 2 save points, 2-3 bonus. All right, all of a sudden he's on 10-11, and he's clawing back that deficit for me on sales. So, given that he's got quite a few of those fixtures up to game week 30, I like it. And then if you can offload in 30, given you have that, I wouldn't say luxury, because I'd say it's more important than a luxury, given you have that ability, resultant of your plan, I think it's a wonderful goalkeeper rotation you can have of going Pickford now and then probably Henderson from 30. Mykolenko I like. I mean, again, I think the Leicester at home fixtures, pretty good. He's cheap. He's a wonderful route into the defence and gives you utility down the line, given the fixtures and given the quality of Everton's defence and their approach. I would, however, say this is not essential, and as such, just make sure it's an efficient use of a transfer, because yes, he's cheap, but like I said, transfers are so precious. Maybe down the line, having that one extra free would really help you. And maybe you could take a hit down the line, but you're really adverse to taking hits. So you make a different decision and everything spirals downwards as a result. So again, just make sure it's a very efficient use of a transfer. Tarkowski, I have a very similar view to Mykolenko. I would say he's more expensive. So again, make sure it's a efficient allocation of funds for yourself, especially if it impacts anything down the line. But he has more attacking threat than Mykolenko, resultant of his threat from set pieces. Honestly, again, I don't mind it. I think it's perfectly justifiable, and I don't really have too many negative things to say about it. Njai I wasn't so keen on when both him and DCL coexisted. But now that DCL is gone, and you know that Iliman Njai is on penalties, and he's more of the talisman as a result, in that side, at least in their attack, I think it's fine. He's cheap. If you want to go there for a short-term punt, it's not like he's guaranteed to blank as a result in the fixtures that follow. So yeah, as long as it's an efficient use of a transfer, I have no issues with it. Like I said, I'm perfectly fine to bet on Bournemouth, bet on Everton here, given all of their assets are quite cheap, given I think the fixtures are okay. Obviously, Liverpool's never going to be the greatest fixture in the world, but when you pair it with Leicester at home and the fact that the Merseyside derby's at home for them, I don't think it's so bad. So again, things to consider, and I really don't mind going Iliman Njai now. My perspective has certainly shifted, and I've warmed to it. This is for the ones of you who really want a differential, And I'm not necessarily advising it, but if you are in a state of mind, but you're just adamant you want like the biggest differential possible, and you feel like this is the only way to chase, I wouldn't necessarily agree with you. But if you did want to go here, I just wanted to talk about Decorate just a little bit, because I don't think it's the worst move in the world. I mean, with his box crashing tendencies, as we've seen in the past, he's always got a goal in him. And I feel like he's got some catching up to do, given he hasn't returned a single goal or assist this season. He's obviously playing in a fairly attacking role, especially if James Conn is to come in for Mangala's place. He'll probably play in the pivot, and then Decore will be the one further advanced, whether that's in the middle on the ball or on the right-hand side. And I just wouldn't be surprised if he scores a goal, gets a return. I just got a feeling he does. I looked at it for my own team. I couldn't justify it because of the utility I would need down the line from that spot. But honestly, I don't think it's that bad as a 1 week punt, or maybe even just keeping him for a few weeks after as a result. I really don't think it's so bad. So for those of you who are really seeking a little bit of a thrill, or just like the fact that you get a midfield differential in a double game week, I think it's okay. Firstly and foremost, I would say that, let's say you don't own a third Liverpool asset, or it's really difficult for you to bring a third Liverpool asset in, or you don't own any of them, Mohamed Salah aside, I wouldn't be that scared. I'm not so bullish on any of the defenders or the goalkeeper getting a massive score this week. I personally think they're going to concede at Bournemouth. Massively reduces their ceiling. If you have to massively restructure your squad to get them in, is it really that optimal to get in a defender who's not kept a clean sheet? Okay, he might score, but he might not, and it's more likely that he doesn't. Obviously, you've got Everton away, which is a better prospect for their clean sheet. But again, I don't think it's a necessity to rip your squad up now that Ipswich at home has gone to get these guys in. Obviously, Wolves at home afterwards is quite nice as well, but after that, especially if you're looking at bringing in some of the more expensive assets, or you need to massively restructure and make sacrifices, given that City and Newcastle afterwards, the short span of good fixtures, I would say, largely just extends to Everton away, Wolves at home. And you can make arguments for both, that for their own reasons, they're actually not so good for a particular asset. You may have seen on X that I posted something about Trent that wasn't exactly so well received, I would say, in the comment section. But I stand by it, and I was being serious. So why did I advocate for some people to sell him? Now, the one thing I would say about that tweet is I could have been a little bit more specific when I used the word many. I meant many in an absolute sense, so hundreds of people reading it, thousands of people reading it, as opposed to 50% of the field, which would be hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of managers. But why? Why am I okay with selling Trent? Well, firstly, Bournemouth away, I think, is a very tough game for him to return. If you look at his performance in the first half against Ipswich, the advancements into the final third, well, there weren't so many of them, especially into those threatening positions, nor did he deliver so many threatening attacking actions for his owners, right, in that first half. Yes, he hit the bar, and yes, he got an assist in the second half, but he really had that in the 10-15 minute flurry, where he also had a shot that I thought nestled right into the top corner, but it went just a little bit wide, right? But outside of that, again, I don't think he had so much in the game where he's so threatening, where it was looking like, oh, I feel so lucky not owning Trent because he should have had like a 100-pointer today. It was all right. Like, as a non-owner, it was absolutely fine outside of that flurry. Then, when you consider that Semenyo probably pins him deeper just for his transitional threat, and the fact that he probably plays a little bit deeper and makes less advancements into the opposition's final third, given Bournemouth's overall transition threat and just threat in general, he probably has even less than he does against Ipswich. And he didn't have too many, okay? So his prospects there, especially when you expect Bournemouth to score, in my opinion, I do at least, the ceiling for that fixture and the floor for that fixture aren't particularly attractive. Like I mentioned, City and Newcastle afterwards, and you probably want to get those funds out of him, especially with the assets that are going to come to the surface and look attractive, like Palace. If you are to free hit in 29 sooner rather than later, I think you'll want to, and you'll need to get money out of him, because his ceiling again reduces with the decreased likelihood of a clean sheet in 26 and 27. Obviously, again, Everton away, Wolves at home is preferable, but Wolves at home could be very safely argued to be better for Konate and Van Dijk, given how poor Wolves are from set pieces, or defending set pieces. And it's not like Trent's taking all of the right-footed set pieces. I've seen Szoboszlai take them. He took them against Ipswich. At times, I saw McAllister take them. I have seen McAllister take them, will be more grammatically correct. So, again, the routes into the attacking points, resulting in attacking returns, I wouldn't say are as there in the same way that they are under Jurgen Klopp. So, yeah, sure, you accept a bit of downside for Everton away and Wolves at home, but mainly just Everton away. And again, even that's a tough fixture. But regardless, given the price, I think it's more than justifiable to spend that money in the midfield and attack, should you have a poor squad structure at the moment. Should you be missing out on some of the better, more expensive assets in your midfield and forward line, right? Should you just have a very poor squad structure overall, or a low team value and need to move the money out, I think it's absolutely fine. So personally, I think it's a very justifiable argument, and I didn't really understand the uproar. But regardless, that's my counter to it and my justification. Staying on the defenders, one of the reasons I'm okay with that is because you have Konate at 5.1, right? He's so much cheaper. His expected minutes, he's nailed. They're taking care of him very well. He probably doesn't play against Plymouth either. So he really should be fit for all of these Premier League games. And on the assumption there's no reoccurrence of his injury, and as they said, it's healing, He's there at 5-1. He's there. And like we said, given the change to the bonus structure, even when defenders return, their ability to access the upper echelons of the bonus, particularly 3 and maybe even 2 to an extent, aren't as good. And as such, you're not really missing out on as much upside as you would in previous years. So I much prefer Konate. Van Dijk, like I said, is just an unnecessarily expensive version of him. Yeah, you get more set piece threat. But the only game that it's really going to make a difference probably is Wolves. And you just accept that like little bit of downside for the 1.3 million that you save. But also, it's not like Konate is inept in the air. Right? So for me, Konate is an absolute gift. And I personally think selling Trent in certain spots is fine. If you have a poor squad structure, if you have a low team value, if you don't have some of the more expensive and better attacking options, I think it's fine. And then moving on to Gakpo, I wouldn't be breaking your squad for him. Look at his away record compared to his home record. It's like chalk and cheese this season. Bournemouth away is probably a decent fixture for him, but it's not great. He is just like Everton, probably okay, but it's not great. Wolves at home is preferable for sure. But I think this week, if you, let's say, have a Diaz or Szoboszlai, I personally wouldn't be making the switch. I think you're okay there. And moving on to Diaz and Szoboszlai, I've warmed to them a bit because I think that Gakpo's ceiling isn't as high as it was against Ipswich. And as such, if a midfielder gets one return, it can do a lot of damage against the forward, albeit Gakpo's better than both probably on the bonus system. So I would, I would say that if you have them, it's okay. Would I be transferring them in? Probably not, but it's not the worst risk in the world to take. On the assumption you're confident in Diaz's expected minutes, and likewise with Szoboszlai because Jones is back. And Alisson, my stance hasn't changed. I don't like it. Minimal upside, blocks cash for moves down the line because you'll have money stored there. And the ceiling just isn't really there, given how good other Liverpool players are on the bonus system. And for him to achieve bonus, such a specific set of conditions need to be met. They need to keep a clean sheet. He needs to get a lot of saves. And he needs Trent, Virgil, Konate, Salah, Gakpo, Diaz, Szoboszlai all not to do so well, whereby they come into the upper echelons of the bonus. So for me, I don't like it at all. I think there are a lot of issues with it, directly and indirectly down the line. And as such, I wouldn't go for him. And that is my roundup of Liverpool's double game week assets. For those of you who are looking to go here early, I would say, because it is Liverpool at home after all, how do I rank Dango Ouattara, Justin Kluivert, and Antoine Semenyo? Well, I would say all three of them present you with very different prospects and different benefits and different challenges associated with them as well, which is very rare, I would say, when you look at three assets all from one team. Normally, it's a little bit closer in terms of the traits they have. If you want the guy with penalties, I would say the one with the most swagger and everything that encompasses, as I say there, I think it encompasses a higher shot volume because he's more willing to take it on. The confidence that comes with it. And think about what confidence does for football players or just yourself when operating in any field. You're more likely to perform and try things and do well and take onus on yourself to get the thing done and therefore a higher ceiling. If you would like all of that, I think Kluivert's your man, but he probably has slightly lower expected minutes given he's probably the worst off the ball out of the front four, and that is something to account for. Or would you like the man who probably boasts the best positional output, if you want to phrase it like that, given he probably plays at number 9 and continues to play that following his hat-trick, and of course the real format as well, given he got his hat-trick most recently in Dango Ouattara, albeit he could get shipped out to the right-hand side at times, or maybe the left and Semenyo goes to the right if someone else is to play up top. Maybe Kluivert goes up top and someone else moves into the 10 like Marcus Tavernier. Obviously, Brad Curry spoke about this on FPL Therapy, and I would strongly recommend going to check that out because he is a Bournemouth fan who certainly knows his football and FPL as well. If you would prefer that, then you've got Ouattara, albeit can you trust him because he hasn't ever gone through a period of prolonged output beforehand? Well, that's something to mention. And something that Brad Curry did mention, and again, I give him full credit, is how he's a little bit one-dimensional with his finishing in terms of his left foot. So that's something to consider. In games where teams don't offer him as much space and he has to manufacture something often on his right foot because people know that his left foot is a lot stronger, how does he tend to perform in those games? Or do you prefer the man with the best expected minutes? Probably, and I mean this with all due respect, the best player out of the three, and just probably the most secure pick and the one with arguably the highest floor because of his consistency over a medium-term span in Antoine Semenyo. But again, you probably don't get the upside that you do with Kluivert or Dango Ouattara, given his position and given how he performs within that side, specifically relating to FPL. Kluivert's probably a lot more trigger happy when it comes to taking shots. And I wouldn't say Semenyo is the type to haul huge. One, because his finishing hasn't been as good as you probably would have liked this season, but he also doesn't really take it upon himself to get every single chance for himself, whereas I feel like Kluivert's more likely to be that man. So if I had to rank them 1, 2, and 3, it would actually be Kluivert 1, and then the other two, I don't want to tell you that, oh, I prefer this one over this one. I'm not too sure. I think I would go with Tara, though, because if he is to play at 9, I think his output could probably be a little bit better than Semenyo, and he's, of course, cheaper. So I would go Kluivert, Tara, Semenyo, because if Kluivert has one of those big hauls again, it covers maybe 2 of Semenyo's good performances. And how many? I think going for 2 is fine if you have strong conviction. The one thing I would say is you haven't seen Bournemouth put so many goals past teams who defend in those like deeper, more compact blocks. Let's say in Everton, for example, even the Palace game where Palace were fairly deep in that second half, and then they obviously didn't manage to score in that 0-0 draw at home. So I would say as long as you're willing to accept the risk of them declining in those different conditions, then I think it's fine to go there. They probably keep scoring goals, in my opinion. They're very useful as assets. They play in 29 if you're not looking to free hit there. They have a double in 33. They've got a really good fixture run beforehand. So for me, I think a double up is absolutely fine on the assumption, like I said, again, you have strong conviction. The only thing I would make sure of is it doesn't compromise your squad structure too much. You don't go and then all of a sudden reinvest the money into the most expensive forward line or defense and then kind of lock yourself out of shifting them on should one of them need to be moved on. But we will go into more detail in Game Week 25, as I imagine more people will be looking to transfer them in for the Southampton away fixture. Finally, one thing you will notice in my team selection is that resultant of me going for David Moyes' assistant manager, should I do that, like I said, 95% of the way there, I will not be going for Brian Mbeumo. And when I posed this to myself, I realized that I didn't really care too much. And then I started to ask myself why, and I was like, this is interesting. I looked at the fixtures and I came across a different interpretation of them. Now, whether that's the correct interpretation, as I say on the slide, or even my preferred one, I'm not so sure. However, I thought it was at least important to share with you that particular interpretation of how I think the fixtures could potentially go. Not necessarily will. Just like with Salah's triple captaincy, I said I wouldn't be surprised if he doesn't do so well. But equally, if he does well, again, I really wouldn't be surprised, given I don't think the fixtures are as bad as is suggested for him specifically. If Jed Spence is back, I think that's quite a difficult matchup for Mbeumo, given the performances I've seen from Jed Spence this season. I think he's been very competent and just, in general, quite a good defender with a good level of physicality as well. And then the other thing is, when I say Spurs' nature, I mean, you never really know what you're going to get from them. They could be in the worst form. But like I said earlier, they could just rock up and beat Real Madrid just for the fact that they're Spurs. And people will say this is some wishy-washy analysis, but it's happened again and again and again and again and again. And I really do think it's just part of their DNA. So I think I'm at least a little bit wary of that I never can trust someone to always put Spurs away because I know what Spurs have in the locker. And then secondly, their quality. One, I've heard that Mickey van der Ven might be back. And then you just look at their team. Maddison, who might be injured, but Kulusevski, Son, Richarlison. There's enough there to hurt pretty much anyone. And Brentford aren't exactly the best team on the planet, right? Nor are they the most consistent team on the planet, albeit a very good team. So again, I think you have to have some appreciation for that. And I don't automatically just see this as a slam dunk. Potter's a different type of coach, whereas someone like Thomas Frank, this season especially, has been like, we're going to play 4 at the back, we're going to play very aggressive football, we're going to press like this, and we don't really care who you are. We'll make certain tweaks here and there, but we will play around a certain philosophy. And that will essentially be the foundation for everything that is to come. Potter's far more willing to adapt from what I've seen. He will look at your strengths and weaknesses. He'll be like, okay, this is A, B, and C. So I will do D, E, and F. And then you're weak in X, Y, and Z. So again, I will do 1, 2, and 3. Okay. And as such, I do think he can make it a little bit more difficult for Brentford if he is able to find quite a good solution and employ that. That game's away as well. And so is Leicester, which, like, Leicester away is not a bad fixture, right? But I know no stretch, but it is still away. So I think I would have some appreciation for that. Then after, 2 fixtures at home, but Everton, we know that they can make life tough for anyone. They have made life tough for many teams this season, hence why Pickford picked up so many points in that section when he played Chelsea, when he played Arsenal, when he played Manchester City, right? Returned in every single one of those. And Aston Villa just have a lot of quality, and I think you need to respect that. So, I'm not maybe as bullish as I was initially when I took a little bit of a deeper look, and I'm just wary at least that it could potentially go a little bit sideways. So I don't think a double up is essential. Maybe wait and see 1 week after Spurs, or maybe just go on the double up for Leicester away once you've seen them really perform. And Mbeumo only has 2 double-digit hauls in the last, I think it's like 11 weeks, which isn't great. Or like 12 weeks, which isn't great, right? So you're not missing out on too much, because if you're not hauling and he's not returning super consistently, you should be okay. Albeit the fixtures have certainly been worse in recent times. So this is just something to consider. Like I said, not necessarily the correct interpretation, but just the other side, because I have presented to you the more positive side previously. And then Bruno and Gordon, just because people are thinking of selling them, and I imagine Mbeumo is the route, I think it's fine to sell him. I think it's fine to keep him. And I think it's very subjective. Maybe you look at Gordon, you interpret his fixtures as ones where actually stylistically they're better from him and you want to keep him. I think that's fine. Maybe you think they're going to be really tough given the opposition he faces and the fact that he hasn't looked too much of a goal threat compared to last season. And he hasn't really looked like Haaland compared to last season as well. I think that's fine. And with Bruno, maybe you're like, oh, Man United, they're playing poorly. He has minutes in the pivot. You don't really want him there. He's expensive. And I don't like the fixtures because Man United are a poor side at the moment. Fair. Equally, you could say, oh, I expect him to get more minutes in those 10 positions and left-hand side 10 positions. And the fixtures actually aren't that bad from a stylistic perspective. And he's on penalties. He's a really secure asset. And I really like to have him because of his high floor and medium ceiling nowadays. I think that's fair. So I don't think they're necessarily 100% sells. I do think that if you have strong conviction, you can keep him, and it's really not the end of the world, nor can anyone call it an outrageously bad decision. And that is all she wrote for this video, ladies and gentlemen. Now, I put a lot of effort in formulating that chip strategy, looking at all the permutations and making this video. So if you could drop a like on the video and get us to 450 likes, and equally subscribe to get us to at least 6,450 subscribers, I would be very, very, very grateful. I'm very much looking forward to the team selection tomorrow when I show you how this plan unfolds in future weeks and what the team looks like and what potentially your team could look like and the strengths and benefits of employing this strategy, at least as I perceive it now. But in the meantime, have a wonderful day. Like I said, I shall see you tomorrow, and goodbye.